G'day guys, Mac with the Our Circle, and today we're going to look at the Battle of Istvaan 5. Because this is such a large and complicated battle, rather than try and squeeze it all into a single video, I'm going to break it up into about 3 different stages. The first of which is going to be the initial Loyalist successes, then obviously the betrayal in the middle of the battle, and then lastly the Raven's flight, so the evacuation of Korax and the Raven Guard Legion. So, with this in mind, let's crack into it. Here we have my recreation of the Istvaan Urgal Plateau. And this area here is where we're really going to be focusing. So, zooming right on into this, we have the fortifications that have been erected by the traitor legions. Initially, Horus dispatched Fulgrim of the Emperor's Children to fortify Istvaan 5, while he, Angron of the World Eaters, and Mortarion of the Death Guard prosecuted the Battle of Istvaan 3, the purging of their own legions. Whilst Fulgrim oversaw the entrenchment of this area, and whilst the traitor legions moved in, the Raven Guard initially arrived in the system with their stealth warships, and they extensively monitored the planet, noting the build-up of the forces overlooking the Urgal Depression. This is what they saw. They saw that existing fortifications had been improved, as well as a network of trenches and void shields had been placed around the area. The combined fleets of the Raven Guard, Iron Hands and Salamanders initially began by commencing a full bombardment of the region. First Manus of the Iron Hands had taken charge because as the most senior Primarch, he felt that he should be in charge of the overall mission, as well as being very headstrong and wanting to hunt down and kill his brother Fulgrim, essentially. Fulgrim disagreed with First Manus' approach, as did Korax. However, Korax didn't want to get combative with his brothers, and Ferris's personality won out at the end of the day. Whilst the Raven Guard successfully monitored the planet themselves, they didn't notice, however, that the void shields were very strong that the traitors had enacted, nor did they realise how deep and extensive the bunker systems were. As a result of this, the initial orbital bombardments were relatively useless. Now, they did damage a lot of the mobile defence platforms which were located outside of the fortifications, and reduced a lot of the traitors' anti-air capacity. But sadly, they didn't grind away the traitors' actual forces located within the actual ruins and fortifications that they'd built. Even as the last shells fell on the traitor positions from the orbital bombardment, the Loyalist forces began their drop assault on the position. The Loyalists landed in 2 key areas. First, the vanguard of the legions, led mostly by the Iron Hands, but with Raven Guard forces to the north and Salamanders to the south. To the rear, or the right of the screen as you view it, is where the build-up of the main forces was, the key landing positions where all the dropships, Thunderhawks, that kind of thing would come in and drop off the troops in relative safety behind the drop pod assault. Now we have the key players in the field. From here, the first thing that happens is Horus throws his Imperial Army forces into the Iron Hands, essentially acting as a human shield for his own legionnaires. They of course are repulsed with heavy casualties because they're mere humans fighting Astartes' forces. The next thing that happens is the Salamanders immediately launch an assault into the Death Guard trenches. Now, this fighting here is pretty intense stuff, because this is like World War I on steroids. You have legionnaires, and both sides are using flamethrowers en masse. Chemical munitions from the Death Guard, regular flamethrowers from the Salamanders, and both sides just love it. So naturally the casualties are huge here, and it is just horrible what's going on. Vicious hand-to-hand fighting, a lot of melee combat in the trenches. The Death Guard, of course, are counter-attacking constantly, bringing in new forces into this fight, and the brutality is not to be understated. This is probably some of the hardest fighting going on Istvaan 5. To the north, meanwhile, the Raven Guard seek to outflank the enemy. So moving into the ridgelines and canyons, they send their forces in a flanking manoeuvre. However, the Sons of Horus' own flanking forces were in this region. Correctly assuming that they would try to be outflanked, they've turned the area into a kill zone, and what it actually divulges into is a series of sort of lesser engagements, squad versus squad instead of army versus army, luring one another into ambushes, laying traps, striking from the shadows, assassinations, you name it, it's all going on up here. So whilst to the south is really heavy, aggressive fighting with mass casualties, to the north it's sort of trying to outsmart and outcunning one another. The Sons of Horus counterstroke does succeed in stalling the Raven Guard at this time, and they make no real headway to the north. At this point, Legio Mortis now moves forward, led by the Dies Irae. They continuously bombard the Loyalist forces as the Loyalists' own titans of the Legio Atturus are brought down by mass conveyor. Ferrus Manus now leads a 1,000 Terminator-strong charge directly at the Emperor's children, shattering the regular line legionnaires who are in his way as he carves his path towards Fulgrim. At the same time, the Salamanders now lead their own counter-assault with over 30 Spartans and Land Raiders against the Dies Irae, punishing the Imperator Titan and forcing Mortis' forces to retreat inside the void shield arrays of the traitor fortifications. At this point, Imperial armoured assets now start to surge forward against the traitor fortifications, massing their super heavy assault tanks. The traitor forces in this area are now starting to break. After 1.3 hours of fighting, the traitor Primarchs begin to take to the field. Angron leads a charge to the north, with the Red Butcher's Terminators at his side, directly between the Iron Hands and the Raven Guard, splitting the Loyalists in two. He then proceeds to divert his forces north, focusing entirely on the Raven Guard, who are getting hacked down utterly. However, he does take huge casualties doing this. At the same time, Mortarion of the Death Guard leads his own counter-assault into the trenches, surrounded by the Death Shroud. Wherever they go, a chemical fog also descends, and basically the Salamanders and the Death Guard are fighting in the dark. At the same time as this, Abaddon, his command squad, and combined infantry force of the Sons of Horus also lead a charge into the centre of the Loyalists. However, glaive tanks of the Salamander's Legion are brought up and repulse Abaddon's forces with very heavy casualties. Loyalist air power now strikes along the entire line, causing high casualties amongst the traitors due to the Loyalist air superiority. At the 1.6 hour mark, hidden bunkers are revealed under the Loyalist staging areas, and World Eaters and Death Guard suicide squads surge into Loyalists, causing mass chaos. Where these forces broke out amongst the Imperial army, there was no containing them, as they were all but unstoppable compared to ordinary humans, and until the Loyalist legionaries counterattacked and killed them, the traitors pretty much had their way with Imperial forces in the area. At the 2.2 hour mark, the two Titan manifolds finally meet, with a splinter force of Legio Mortis engaging Legio Atturus. Legio Atturus takes the field with 2 Reavers and 3 Warhounds. Mortis meets them with a Warlord, 2 Reavers, a Knight Gaunt, and 2 Warhounds. Knowing that they are doomed, they still take the fight to the enemy with Ferrus Manus' own personal approval. They actually succeed in destroying the Warlord Breath of Thunder, with the Loyalist Princep's own Titan, the Reaver Red Naga. However, the resulting explosions of the 2 Titans dying actually takes out a lot of traitor forces, so it's kind of a win for the Loyalist forces. The Iron Hands Subjugator anti-tank detachment does manage to kill off the remaining Titans, and both Titan manifolds are essentially destroyed and out of the fight. At this point in the fight, after 2.8 hours, casualties for both sides are around 40% for all forces. Angron and Mortarion have both retreated under the sustained fire of the Loyalists, and the Loyalists begin to pull back and regroup and rearm, all except for Ferrus. Ferrus and his 1,000 Gorgon Terminators refuse to give an inch and continue towards the traitor positions, with massed Loyalist artillery tanks moving in behind, pummeling the traitor positions. So, to this point in the battle, it's all been going the Loyalist way pretty much. However, the casualties are starting to show. You do have to remember that these are Legion versus Legion engagements. There's about 70,000 troops in every single army you're seeing here right now. The Iron Hands don't have their full numbers to bear. This is in fact only the advanced elements of the Iron Hands forces, many of whom are still scattered around the universe, or around this galaxy I should say. And strategically, that's going to come into play much later on with the Shattered Legion offensives. However, for the moment, basically the First Company Elite, or Averni Clan, that sort of thing, are all there with Ferrus Manus. The Raven Guard and the Salamanders, however, are mostly there in pretty much their full numbers. There's only about 1,000, 2,000 Raven Guard that aren't actually in this battle, so that gives you an idea. Same with the Salamanders themselves. Legio Adoris, yeah, they don't have their full numbers here either. In fact, it's just a demi-maniple. And this whole demi-maniple is destroyed as a result of this fighting. The Imperial Army elements, yeah, they're sort of being retconned into this battle by Forge World. Several novels make reference to them not being there. Well, now they're there, so I've worked it in anyway, although I personally don't agree with it. Anyway, as it stands, huge amounts of troops on both sides have been killed. If my maths is correct, you'd be probably only looking at about 30 to 40,000 traitor legionnaires surviving from the Emperor's Children, World Eaters, Sons of Horus, and Death Guard. All 4 of those legions were absolutely shattered between their infighting that happened on Istvaan 3, the purging of their legions, and of course this battle. Obviously, things are going to get turned around in the next episode with the massacre, the inevitable betrayal of Istvaan, and the sneaky traitor shenanigans that go on, but that of course is for the next episode. As time goes on, we will sort of study this more in depth. I'm Mac with the Circle. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Hope you enjoy what I'm trying to do with the artwork, making it really clear who's where, what's where, that sort of thing. And obviously with what I've sort of photoshopped in for fortifications and that kind of thing in the background. Hopefully it looks pretty authentic to Istvaan. I had to create all this myself, as some of you might have seen in video where I created the artwork. Anyway, thanks all for watching. See you all next time.